Hello, and welcome to Tomversations. My name is Tom Hollingsworth, the networking nerd. And today I'd like to talk a little bit about networking, specifically wide area networking. I'd like to go into a little bit of detail about kind of how it's developed, where it is today, and really why I think the WAN is dead. So let's talk. Wide area networking is very old. I mean, when you think all the way back to the beginnings of what computer networking was originally built to do, connecting computers, the next logical step was to connect groups of computers to other groups of computers in a place that they're not currently physically residing. Think all the way back to the beginnings of the internet, back when it was the DARPANET. It was a research network designed to connect research facilities and universities together over a wide area. I mean, you can't get any more textbook than that. And as it started growing and changing, we started to look at wide area networking differently. One of the first changes in the way that WANs operated was the de-emphasis of the mainframe computer. And you think all the way back to the day when all of the data that you could ever possibly want was stored on one computer in a stack of punch cards in a shoebox. Well, in order to be able to access the data that's stored on that computer, you had to be able to access the computer itself. Hence the reason for the DARPANET. We had to get university computers online and talking to each other. But then we decentralized. Instead of having all of the inputs needed to be done on a mainframe, we created client-server architecture. So now we have data that's stored in a central repository, and we have clients that are able to access it from remote locations. I mean, this was one of the first big changes in the way that computers operated. Now, I didn't need to sit on a terminal in front of the mainframe. Now, I could access data from anywhere, which emphasized the importance of wide area networking. Because now, my clients may not necessarily be located directly next to my resources. Servers had to be reachable by everyone. So we had to build out good networks for that. The next big change came with the rise of the internet. Now, most people out there, when you think of the internet, probably think of Tim Berners-Lee's World Wide Web. But if you are familiar with things like Gopher, Archie, you probably realize there was more to the internet than just hypertext transfer protocol. The internet was designed to get people talking to each other. But as the World Wide Web took more prominence over the other services, the way that we used the internet started to change. So rather than a high-speed WAN connecting multiple locations on a geographic area, it started to become more of a resource. It started to become more of a static way to present information. And that changed the way that we used it. Now, instead of using all of these different protocols, we started using one or two protocols. Instead of, using things like Finger to determine what someone's plan file looked like, we just looked it up on their blog. Instead of using convoluted file transfer protocols, we just used FTP. So the internet changed the way that we used networks. And if the internet changed the way that we use networks, cloud pretty much finished that off. So the recent shift in cloud computing has actually caused us to move away from even using the internet as a static data resource. Think about how we use data today. We don't even bother accessing it in the place where it lives, because where it lives right now is somewhere in a farm being operated by Amazon or Microsoft or Google or even Oracle Cloud. We don't even need branches to look like a branch office anymore. It used to be that a branch office was some kind of big facility that contained resources and data for us to access. So the New York office would talk to the Los Angeles office, the Seattle office would talk to the Miami office. But they had resources that were specialized and unique for those areas. Now, we just store all of that in the cloud. So New York, LA, Seattle, Miami, London, and Brisbane can all access the data no matter where they are. Cloud has upended the way that we look at the architecture of these branch offices. Now, here's where the networking piece comes into play. Think about the way that we've started optimizing wide area networking as of late. Think all the way back to when we originally started building WANs with technology. Routers were very specialized pieces of hardware because they did two things. They switched packets across disparate networks, And they needed specialized interface cards to operate dedicated leased line circuits. So if you've ever tried to configure an ATM circuit, if you've ever had to configure a T1, you know what I'm talking about. These were specialized serial circuits that were dedicated and expensive, but necessary in order to be able to access other things in a wide area network, especially if you had specialized dedicated circuits that were run between offices. But we changed that with the internet, because now, in order to ensure that the largest amount of the population could get on the internet, we used cheap broadband circuits. And a long time ago, someone figured out, well, if I have a broadband connectivity between my branch and the internet, then technically I do have connectivity between my two branches. I just may need to secure that somehow. And that's where VPNs come into play here. So by using commodity broadband circuits and VPN software, I no longer need a dedicated leased line between my branches. I might still need a dedicated leased line from my branch to my headquarters location, but I don't need to pay for full mesh connectivity. Consequently, hub and spoke network connectivity between branches became a much bigger thing. Look at the current crop of SD-WAN appliances. I dare you to find a T1 interface on any of them. Odds are good you can't. In fact, all the ones that I'm aware of, I don't even think T1s are a possibility. Everything is Ethernet based or 4G LTE cellular connectivity based. Why? Because now routers don't need to be nearly as complicated because we've effectively settled on Ethernet as our connectivity of choice. SD-WAN appliances do something different. Look at what they're optimized to do. They're optimized for applications. They're optimized to get people on the cloud. So they do things like on-ramp, where they look at the lowest latency to a point of presence to steer traffic so that Office 365 loads faster. They optimize application traffic between branch to cloud, or possibly even branch to branch, for things like VoIP and video. They're not focused on connectivity. They're focused on optimization. So in essence, WANs are no longer about connection. They're about data exchange. Now, here's the final wrinkle in this whole puzzle that only came about this year. So we have a branch location. Could be in a small town. It could be in a smaller town than your headquarters. That's well and good. But do we still need a branch office? If you'd have asked me that question in January, I would have said, yeah, we need branches. If you asked me that question in August of 2020, the answer is a lot cloudier. No pun intended. Because now we've spent effectively 6 months working from our homes. This is my branch office. I don't need commercial real estate. I don't need slow connectivity. And in a lot of ways, my commodity broadband circuit here at home has given me more performance than I would have had in some other office somewhere else. My wireless is better. My storage is better. I don't need to be in a commercial real estate office. And SD-WAN appliances are small enough and inexpensive enough that if I do need to provide some kind of a cloud on-ramp facility, if I do need to provide some kind of secured connectivity to a data repository in a traditional data center, I can just buy an SD-WAN appliance and have it shipped to someone's house. And then I can create a kind of a pseudo branch where I have specific connectivity to the resources that I need, along with direct internet access for everything that I don't. And when you think about how many things I use that are in the cloud, direct internet access is probably still getting the majority of the bandwidth usage in my facility. WAN has gone from being a way to connect multiple sites together to changing the way that we access data, to moving it to more static forms of representation into the cloud. And now, thanks to a global pandemic, we don't even know if we have to be in an office anymore. Do you see how you could begin to believe that the WAN is dead? If you don't believe me, listen to people from the Dell'Oro group. So Dell'Oro is a research firm that has done a lot of data collection on things like SD-WAN. And in a report released this year, they said that SD-WAN in 2019 grew by 64%. It's a fairly impressive number when you think about all of the WAN circuits out there that need to be replaced. But look at Dell'Oro's projections for what's going to happen over the next 4 years. By 2024, they are predicting that it will grow by 168%. So they're expecting it to double and almost double again in the next 4 years. Ask yourself where all of that connectivity is coming from. Ask yourself where all of these circuits are coming from. If you are in the middle of an SD-WAN project right now, you've probably been asking yourselves these questions as well. Do I still need a dedicated circuit, an MPLS circuit from my provider, or can I get away with commodity broadband? Do I need to start looking at reallocating all of my resources to the cloud anyway, and then I can use different circuits to get there? Do I even need to pay the rent on this building next year because all of my employees are going to be working from home for the foreseeable future? The WAN is venerable. The WAN is important. But the WAN is not necessary, because as technology changes and we change the way that we consume technology, from mobile devices to cloud applications, we've learned that sometimes the old technologies aren't as critical as we thought. I don't know what the future of WAN is going to look like in the next 5 years. Even companies like Dell'Oro and Gartner and Forrester can't 100% reliably predict that. Just like 5 years ago, we couldn't reliably predict where we are today. But the way that things are going, I think WAN is on its way out. And I think that's probably for the best. That should just about do it for today's episode. Thank you very much for tuning in. We always appreciate your comments and your shares of these great videos. If you'd like to find out more about these topics and other great technical resources, please head over to our website at gestaltit.com. We have other video series, we have blog posts, and we also have podcasts that we would love for you to consume and share with your friends and others in the community. And you please join me again for another Tomversation coming up soon. And if you have suggestions for any topics that you'd like to hear about, please make sure to email me, tom@gestaltit.com.